and welcome into this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Tampa Bay Lightning podcast your first listen of the day. And for everybody on the Lightning feed, let me introduce myself. My name is Armando Velez. I'm from PantherParkway.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Monoman12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_F Panthers. And it's a postseason crossover edition. And I'm very, very excited to be recording this with who I call my counterpart here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Mr. Adam Denker. Mr. Adam, we meet again.
Yeah, we have to. We're starting to make this a tradition now. The series so nice that we have to do it twice. So uh, glad that we're getting. I was thinking when the playoffs started, Armando, that oh man, are we gonna have to do this again? I've already gotten over playing the Islanders 2 years in a row, and now I'm gonna have to play the Florida Panthers in a row, 2 years in a row. Probably one of the teams in the Eastern Conference you definitely don't want to play, but listen, that's what happens when you have two good teams from the same state, and I don't care who says it, Florida is a hockey state.
And even we're starting to see more national people starting to say that too.
Yeah.
And I think about it multiple ways. I preferred to play the Tampa Bay Lightning in round two, but at the same time, myself and a lot of my people from Panther Parkway didn't really have a big preference on who the Florida Panthers rather play. Play really, they think of it as if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, and what a challenge that the Florida Panthers have on their hands to face off against the two-time Stanley Cup champions, and after last year's epic 6-game series, and even though the Tampa Bay Lightning went all the way and advanced 3 rounds further, many around the National Hockey League thought that series was the best one of all of the playoff series. And Florida, of course, even strength was really it played the Tampa Bay Lightning really well at even strength. What killed them last year was special teams. They took too many penalties. They were out of position. They got Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos back right at the right time, 40% on the power play. And of course, Vasilevsky, that was part of his uh, consecutive streak of shutouts in a series clinching game. And Vasilevsky was just hard to get through. And the Florida Panthers found ways at times, but special teams was what ultimately killed them.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that probably we could both agree on when it comes to the game of hockey is special teams will kill you. That's something that the Lightning have. I guess it's a good place to start. That's good. That's the way. That's what's killed the Lightning all season long. Special teams, especially taking unneeded penalties. We saw it throughout this entire previous series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that is definitely something, especially playing against a team as talent as the Florida Panthers, who are reasonably good on the power play. Definitely something my team needs to clean up going forward. So, didn't like how this previous series went against the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I think the Lightning are going in with a ton of confidence, not only just seeing how things went with this Maple Leafs team previously, but how the series went between our teams last year. I'm not saying that they're going to go in there and, just phone it in because they think they could, well, we beat them last year in 6. We could probably do it again. But I think really what played in our favor this year, Armando, was playing each other the last week of the season. You ran into my boys right as we got hot. And that was something that really, it didn't look like it later on in the last couple of games of the season, but I think that was something that the Lightning kind of had in the back of their mind that let's just get them one more time before we get into the playoffs because most likely we're gonna have to play these guys again at some point anyway. But yeah, it's very strange how our teams are different yet have changed and but have stayed the same at the same time since we've last seen each other.
Mhm. Yeah. The cores are still there between the two teams, just different surrounding
Yeah.
pieces around. And for that last matchup between the Lightning and the Panthers, I also consider the fact that there's a big gap in between their third game and their fourth game. Their third game came in December, while they played the first 3 times in October, November, December. Florida got them in the first time 4-1. Tampa Bay beat them the second go round in overtime. Aaron Ekblad, just if he got the puck a little bit higher on Vasilevsky and he didn't make a glove save, that could have been an overtime winner. And then Braden Point goes the other way all by himself off the bench. The third one was the COVID game for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, of course, the Florida Panthers, they don't apologize for wins, but they do understand at the same time the circumstances at play. So that can be a little bit of a wash for that one. And then, of course, the last one, a lot of the same issues that the Florida Panthers had last season in their playoffs, in the playoffs, kind of came around this game in the last week of the season for the Panthers. And part of me, like you said, then we saw towards the tail end of the season how the Florida Panthers were really starting to slow down. And I was just starting to think, it's like, is this the Panthers we're going to see in the playoffs, or is this just okay? The last week of the season, are they really taking their foot off the gas pedal? We don't know the answers to that. That's the truth. We just don't know. But and then we saw, of course, it getting really tense between, of course, Sam Bennett and Mikhail Sergachev, and then Ryan Lomberg on Eric Chernak. Lomberg got an instigator penalty and then a 1-game suspension. Bruno got a fine. Bennett, of course, he had that charging penalty last year on Ross Colton, and then got suspended for game 2. So of course, Pat Maroon, of course, being a pain in the ass for the Florida Panthers, and Ryan Lomberg is that guy for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So each person has their own guy that's trying to like get in the heads of the other, and that's what makes these teams so similar, but also different at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, believe it or not, I actually prefer when the Lightning don't play that type of game. And I'll tell you why, because I feel like with the Lightning, and I'm sure you've seen it with your guys at certain times as well, it seems as though this team is so talented at so many things, is that when they focus, especially on the physical aspect of the game, you see everything suffer right away. And it takes them a couple of games to kind of get it back going again. And I think we're going to see somewhat of a similar, obviously, in terms of intensity, series as we saw last year. But I think really, I wouldn't be shocked if this series is played differently by both these teams. I think we're going to see kind of somewhat of a conservative couple of games to start off the series. I think what will really happen is that both teams will see, all right, who's going to throw the first punch, who's going to lay the first big hit. And I wouldn't be shocked if we get to game 3 or 4, and then that's when the big hits start flying.
I could see that too, because nobody on either side wants to be the start of what could be a big chain reaction, because none of these teams, none of the people who cover them none of them would be surprised if this is an extended series that goes the distance. So that's the thing. It's all about pace too. In game 6 of the first round between the Panthers and the Washington Capitals, we saw a little bit of desperation from Washington as they were starting to get very physical early, and then their hits were like in the mid-20s, and then in the second period it was like not even 10. So they conserved a little bit of their energy, and of course in desperation to in an elimination game, and that could be a case as well. And the Florida Panthers, especially being at home, which they didn't show up at home last year. They getting swept in both games 1 and 2. They don't want that to happen this time, and they know how important it is to get both of these games at home. Of course, if you split, it's not the end of the world. You still have to find a way to win on the road in the postseason. But the Panthers, I agree with you that I don't think that it's going to be too physical as far as the pushing and the shoving. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of those someone on the doorstep and a little like push here and there, but nothing too crazy, at least in the beginning. So that's what I think about that. So let's see how it tenses up. I'm very curious to see when it does.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting because you know what, that is probably the more likely scenario, or we could probably see a couple of fights off the opening puck drop, just as a sign as the hey, let's just get this over with and then play the series.
Absolutely. You just never know when it comes to rivalries for sure. But Adam, let's talk about our first round series next. But first, tell us all about Built Bar.
All right, so it's going to be a long series, and you know it's that time of year where everybody is looking for healthy alternatives in the things they eat. You know, we still have people that have. If you're still working on your New Year's resolution and working out, congratulations! I dropped it on January 2nd, but I'm still trying to eat healthy, and the best way I can eat healthy is by one of our best sponsors, the OG sponsors that have been around since day one, and that is Built Bar. Imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tube of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing that that was only 150 calories and 60 grams of protein. That is what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built Bar. I just received my birthday cake puffs, and I just have never had anything like this before. They're available right now. We can't promise that they'll be there tomorrow, so you got to get them today. And if you haven't tried the puffs, I'll let you on a little secret because that's what friends do, Armando. A chocolate covered marshmallow protein bar. You heard me. Delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. Make every day your birthday with Built Bar's birthday cake puffs. Built has taken this delicious experience of biting into a fresh slice of birthday cake enthroned in 100% white chocolate and added sprinkles. So go to built.com, use that promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com.
The Built Puffs were my breakfast this morning, along with some coffee. So definitely is some good fuel heading into this morning recording of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. It's the second segment here of this Battle of Florida crossover edition of the show. And let's talk about how our teams looked in round one of the postseason. Uh, Obviously, for the people on my feed, they know the Florida Panthers go up against the Washington Capitals and they beat them 4-2. Not looking their best, going behind twice already in the series, losing game 1 and game 3. Game 3, the tires just blow off them. And Alexander Barkov and company, they had a team meeting after game 3, and then they ended up winning 3 straight. And this is a team that goes 0 for 18 on the power play in round 1. So that they didn't look their best in round 1. And Alexander Barkov was a little silent in the beginning of the series, and then he got himself going at the end. And then Carter Hagee averaging 2 points a game in the series. He finds a way to like help the Florida Panthers carry them over the Washington Capitals in this one. So it's been an incredible series for Carter Hagee, even though the Panthers as a team didn't look their best, and they allowed 6 power play goals to the Washington Capitals, mostly to TJ Oshie. And even though there was no Tom Wilson, they still found a way to win this one, and they were able to contain Alexander Ovechkin for the most part, despite him having an injury going into round 1. But your Tampa Bay Lightning, they win 4-3 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, a team that many people thought that could have finally won a first round series since 2004 for Toronto. And for Toronto, this wasn't a lot of narratives around the Toronto Maple Leafs is that they didn't feel like it was an embarrassment like last year. They saw it as they just went up against the Stanley Cup champions, the 2-time Stanley Cup champions, and man, they have their best season in a long time, and they run into these guys. Kind of how Florida felt last year, kind of. And look what happens: the Tampa Bay Lightning win the championship. But I want to get your perspective on how and of what you thought of the Tampa Bay Lightning in that round 1 series, because we were both talking about pre-recording that both of the teams didn't look their best in round 1.
Yeah, to say that the Lightning did not look their best would probably be almost at times a little bit of an understatement. The problem for this team all year long has been consistency, which we have not seen any from this team really all season long, which is why it's almost incredible that they won this series to a certain extent. you know, you start off the first, going into game 6, the Lightning have neither team actually failed to win games in consecutive fashion. And you kind of figured, well, this means kind of like that the Maple Leafs are due, but no. The Lightning battled. They show why that veteran core is so good. They showed why they're the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion, and you got to tip your cap really, because what it came down to in that last game was Andre Vasilevsky doing Andre Vasilevsky things. He has had a little bit of a rough season thus far this year. A lot of it could be probably attributed to the fact that he's played so many games over the last couple of years, and then now playing 55 plus games for only playing 55 plus games for the first time in his career. Only has played 50 games once in his NHL career. So, that after a bunch of playoff games and the first 82 game full season in a while, it takes a toll on you. But he battled. And that's really what the playoffs are about, is that mental fortitude, and we're gonna see a lot of that in this series. And but one of the big issues now with this Lightning team, heading into a series with your boys, is Braden Point. He got hurt in that last game against the Florida Panthers. We all know the history story of the history of Braden Point's injuries, and not sure exactly what it is just yet, but he's highly doubtful for game 1. And I think really we're going to see how John Cooper. It's going to be very interesting to see how John Cooper could turn these around. These lines up there, because he has Jan Rutta on that third line, which is very interesting given that Jan Rutta is a defenseman. But we saw that in the past last year with Luke Schenn, that John Cooper isn't afraid to play that extra defenseman out there, especially in a series that he knows is going to be super physical. So you know what? In a way, you hate to see Pointer out of the lineup, and hopefully he gets back and he could start get things going, because let's face it, he wasn't exactly vintage Braden Point at times throughout the series. But when you have a guy like that who has 38 career playoff goals and has been a huge part of this team's success over the last couple of years, you definitely are going to miss him at certain points.
Yeah, and after that comeback in game 6 at home, being down 1, and then finding a way to win after that, and then of course game 6, where now it's 5 straight years where the Toronto Maple Leafs have lost a winner take all game, and of course the champions, they find a way to win when even when they don't play their best. And the Florida Panthers do have a player on their side of things that is unlikely to play, Mason Marchment, who is an original who is from the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were traded him for Dennis Mulligan. He won an AHL championship. And it's funny because Carter Verhaeghe, regardless of whether it was the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Tampa Bay Lightning, he would have played one of his former teams, because he's an original Maple Leafs draft pick. And then playing in a bottom 6 role, I know only 8 playoff games for the Tampa Bay Lightning in their cup run in 2020. But he was going to play his former team regardless of what happened. And I also think about this for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Their first championship in the Edmonton bubble, well, Toronto and then going to Edmonton later on, they won that championship in late September that year. Yeah. You turn around less than a year later, win in late June. You go a few months, a very shortened off season again, and then, like you said, Vasilevsky's workload is a lot right now. Of course, you're going to get some bangs and bruises when you play so many games. I mean, Nikita Kucherov started off with an injury for the season again, and Braden Point, of course, hurt in Game 7, which was an ugly injury from just near the boards. I don't wish that on anyone. It's just I've never injured my leg that badly, but I've injured my leg, and that one just, it hurt me. I mean, Aaron Ekblad had one in Dallas in 2021, and that was you never want to see a player go through that. But I also think about it like that with the Tampa Bay Lightning, about how much less turnaround that they have with the Florida Panthers. But I also think about this. Yes, the majority of the core has played a lot of games, but a replenishment of that third line for the Tampa Bay Lightning has a little bit of fresh energy for that team. I mean, Nick Paul had an amazing Game 7 for Tampa Bay, and of course, you get Brandon Hagel on a very, of course, the trade for him was very expensive as far as draft capital, but the cap hit that's under the cap of the Tampa Bay Lightning fits so well for what they're trying to do. Of course, every team that's being a contender is spending high, and they have very little wiggle room for to fit on a team. I mean, the Florida Panthers had that situation where they used Aaron Ekblad's LTIR space to get Robert Haig from the Buffalo Sabres, and they were part of a 3-way trade with Carolina for them to get Max Domi. And look what Max Domi did in Game 7 for the Carolina Hurricanes, gets them over the top. So there's a lot of nipping and crunching for these teams to try to get things together. And like I said, there's a little bit of fresh energy on that bottom 6 for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And after losing Gord and Gaudreau last year, and Blake Coleman, like bottom 6 is how you win championships. Like that's a part of at least your middle 6, but that's going to help you get over the top. And of course, the Florida Panthers, them missing Mason Marchment, that's going to be a kind of a big loss for them, because he's a guy who brings the physicality, and he's a guy who's just a grinder out there. So it's going to be really telling when it comes to the bottom 6 of both of these teams.
Yeah, but isn't that what the playoffs are all about? Depth.
Absolutely.
We've seen it the last couple of years, and I have to say, I am, Brandon Hagel has struggled somewhat to really get things going, but he has played very well. He adds a lot of depth to the lineup, of course. But this third line, I must say, the amount of pressure that they have received, not only locally but nationally, to follow up what Gaudreau Coleman, that Gaudreau Coleman line has done over the last couple of years, for these 3 guys to step up, Colton, Hagel, and Paul, in the way they did, especially Nick Paul, who I think his performance has been a huge surprise since coming over from the Senators. They have done a fantastic job, and I really think that we're going to see them play a huge factor alongside some of the big boys that you already know and are familiar with up top.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's going to be really about which one can get them that greasy goal sometimes, and sometimes when it comes to the power play as well. The Florida Panthers, again, 0 for 18. They got to find a way to score on the power play against the best goalie in the world right now, until proven otherwise. But we're going to transition over to the next segment, where we're going to actually give our series predictions for this series. So stick around on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast, where we'll be discussing more about this second go round of the Battle of Florida. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports development, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, Stanley Cup playoffs, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Continuing this Battle of Florida crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast your first listen of the day. We haven't really spoken much about really the other series around the NHL before we get to our predictions, but it's so cool out west that there is also a Battle of Alberta between the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames, the first time since 1991. I wasn't even born yet. And you see Connor McDavid putting the dagger on the LA Kings late in the game. You never see Connor McDavid give that much emotion. Then he finds a way to carry his team. And then the epic Game 7. Jake Ottinger was the player of the playoffs so far, even in a losing effort. And the Calgary Flames were able to. Johnny Gaudreau, he's going to earn himself a nice contract this offseason. It's crazy how we're getting both East and West for a battle of states in the U.S. and provinces out in Canada. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought it was a fantastic series. I was actually when I was doing the Thursday spot on the Locked On NHL podcast with my co-host from Locked On Avalanche, Chris Masilli. I was telling Chris that I was actually on the bandwagon for the Dallas Stars. The way that Stars team is built, and especially, Jake Ottinger this season, he has definitely won me over. So having him, seeing him have that kind of performance in that type of game was really not a surprise. I thought he did fantastic. It was a shame, you want to see a goaltender kind of get repaid by by what he puts out, especially in a game like that. But he'll be back. I mean, goaltenders like that. We'll see this Dallas Stars team, and we'll see Jake Ottinger back. But listen, the trade-off is Battle of Alberta. Probably the only series, probably throughout the NHL. I mean, there's a few here and there that I could think of, but the only other rivalry that I could really think of where the two teams are at the top of their powers, other than our guys, that is just as good. But it's going to be interesting. That would be interesting to see how that series plays out. I wouldn't be shocked if that goes 7. I don't think anybody would. But the way that the Flames are playing and the way Johnny Gaudreau is playing, and Matthew Tkachuk, I wouldn't be shocked if that series also gets finished up quickly. But I'm also curious to see how the St. Louis Blues and Avalanche series go, just because the Avalanche have kind of been sitting around for a little bit. And if there's anything we know about that Avalanche team is that they thrive on consistency and to be off for that period amount of time. And let's face it, we kind of figured that Nashville Predator series was going to go the way it did. So now they get their first real test, and we'll see how they could deal with that adversity early on in the series.
Yeah, and let's not forget the New York Rangers finding a way to grind out a win over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Of course, a little context, the Pittsburgh Penguins were using their third-string goalie and the injury with Sidney Crosby, but Igor Shesterkin finding a way to carry them over. And then, of course, the Carolina Hurricanes, such a defensively sound hockey team, having with Freddie Anderson likely coming back in round 2, even though Antti Raanta played well enough to keep the job. That's going to be a series that I don't know if I see New York winning that one with how difficult Carolina is. But, hey, you never know. Igor Shesterkin at times looks shaky, but he found the way to steal a game in Game 7 for the New York Rangers. But I want to go over the schedule right before we give our predictions a little bit for this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. So here's the schedule as goes. And Game 1 is tonight. May 17th at 7 p.m. Game 2 is Thursday, May 19th at 7 p.m. Game 3 is a back-to-back. Game 3 and 4 are back-to-backs Sunday at 1:30, and then May 23rd at 7. Game 5 is Wednesday at FLA Live Arena. No time yet. Game 6 is May 27th at Emily Arena, and then Game 7 will be Sunday, May 29th at FLA Live Arena. Shall there be a Game 7? And a lot of the complaints in South Florida are it's conflicting with the heat. There's only one game, 6 out of those 7 games that they are conflicting. But I do give you permission, Florida Panther fans, that it's socially acceptable to dual cast both games. And, of course, both Locked On Panthers and Locked On Heat are doing live shows. So you can watch both of them after, and there's a big time gap, 7 p.m. for Florida Panther games, 8:30 for Miami Heat games, so that you'll be able to watch both. So it's socially acceptable for both. So, Adam, it is time for we are getting towards the tail end of the show. Last year, the Florida Panthers, they lost this series in 6 games, and the Tampa Bay Lightning went all the way to the Cup. At the time, many said whoever won this series could go all the way. I think it's could be that very same thing this year. Of course, there's a Colorado Avalanche team that's heavily favored on the other side. But I'm gonna give you the floor first on giving you on who you picked to win this series. And The floor is yours, my friend.
Well, I mean, the easy question there. I mean, it's my boys in 7. I think anything less than 7, I think, will be a drastic surprise for this series. I think we're just going to see more of the same. And we did state before that we might have a little bit of a slow buildup in the first couple of games in terms of the intensity and physicality. We'll see spurts here and there, but I think once the series gets into the later stages, 5, 6, and 7, I think it's going to be a full out war. I really think that we're going to see contributions from players that really you wouldn't normally see during the regular season in terms of scoring, in terms of doing other things. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we see guys like Eric Chernak get involved heavily in the goal scoring. I mean, it's that kind of a series where you lay a big hit along the boards, the puck squirts out right in front, and then you have your fourth line forward right there scoring the game-winning goal. So I'm just excited that we get to do this again. That we continue to help show the rest of the NHL and as well as our locked on NHL colleagues why hockey is why one of the best states in hockey is Florida.
Yeah, and it's people are talking about it more and more here. Even the people outside, people who are casuals, they talk about it more. It's like, oh, they're going against each other, right? I'm like, yes, they are. Tune in. You're gonna because this is the first time that it's happened as far as hockey. It's never happened in basketball. In football, it's happened with the Dolphins and Jaguars. Back in like the late '90s, Dan Marino's last game was a blowout, a 62-7 blowout in Jacksonville against Mark Brunell and the Jags. But the Panthers, for them to get the older brother 2 years in a row, the team that they're trying to get over. I mean, me and Jacob Winans have talked about on this show about how when the Washington Capitals won their cup in 2018, the Pittsburgh Penguins beat them in the postseason a few times over, many times. And the Washington Capitals in 2018 found a way to get over the older brother at the time. And of course, we know how the story ends. Alexander Ovechkin gets his first Stanley Cup. It's funny because on the basketball side of things, in the early 2010s, the Miami Heat were that top seed, and the Indiana Pacers were trying to get over that older brother, but they did not get over that hump for that core. And so we've seen two different iterations. I've seen two different iterations of it, but I think the Florida Panthers, with their motivation going into this offseason to get all that draft capital out and bring in the players to help them now. Sam Reinhart. I think of Claude Giroux, of course. Ben Sherratt, who just faced these guys last year in the Stanley Cup final. I think the Florida Panthers and goaltending hasn't been an issue for the Panthers. We haven't had to talk about bringing in Spencer Knight in when it comes to this team, and we're talking about 3 goalies in last year's postseason series for these two. It's only been 1, and that's a great thing for the Panthers. That's what they paid Sergei Bobrovsky to do. So I'm going to say the Florida Panthers finally get over the hump. It's time for them to get, and I think it makes the rivalry better. It's not just because I'm rooting for this team, but I think it makes the rivalry better for Florida, that it's not so one-sided at one time around. And of course, I don't wish for the Tampa Bay Lightning to win over beat the Florida Panthers again if they meet again in a few years from now. Of course, I'm going to root for the Panthers, but I think it's so good for the rivalry as well that you get one out of these guys and really make it a tradition that these guys will face off more often, because their window is starting to open. They're in that phase in their life cycle where it's starting to break open, and it's like, how are they gonna ram through the door and just break it in this series, or are they gonna not find a way to open that door? So, and I think with how determined they are and how they played well off season and their motivation, and even though they struggled on the power play in round 1, I think they find a way through. So I'm going to say Panthers in 7, and they got home ice in game 7. And of course, I know Tampa Bay won a road game 7 in round 1 in Toronto, in one of the toughest places to play, but they only lost 7 times in the regular season at home. So I really like their chances being at FLA Live Arena, which is after being there for games 1, 2, and 5, it's been a really great environment there. So I'm going to say Panthers in 7.
All right, that's. I may the best man win. I mean it. Like we said,
Yeah.
who knows what's going to happen in the first couple of games. But listen, these two teams playing each other is going to be tons of fireworks, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, if you're a neutral fan of this series, you're all probably relaxed and just enjoying some hockey. But if you're people like Mr. Adam Denker and myself, it's gonna be some long nights. It's gonna be some you know some shivers down our spines at times. Some maybe pacing around back and forth just to see who's gonna break through if the game is tied late, especially in this type of rivalry. It's gonna be fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, Adam, I want to thank you for joining me on this crossover edition, pre-series crossover edition of the Battle of Florida edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. For everyone on my side, tell everybody where they can follow you and your work online.
You could follow my work on Last Word on Sports. I'm writing about hockey on there. You could give the show a follow, Locked On Lightning, LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as Locked On_Lightning on Instagram. And yeah, give us a follow on the YouTube channel if you want to see me gloat about some of the Lightning wins, or if you want to see me absolutely sit in misery after some of the Lightning losses.
For sure. And everyone on the Lightning feed, they can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And of course, check out the guys at PantherParkway.com as they have posted a few articles heading into this Battle of Florida. So take a read, and of course, it's on.
Yeah, it's
so,
on.
Adam, thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, Armando. It's so